Good morning. Welcome to the Science Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra Weldis here at CSLDallas. And can I ask you just to close that door just a little bit because they're rehearsing on the other side. We've been moved out. We have our annual meeting where we normally meet on a Sunday morning. So we're here in our classroom. Thank you to Dr. Tracy for jumping right in last week. I broke my collarbone last week, and so I'm still in a sling. It's oh so very much fun. Come on in, come in. So everything is a little different this morning, but it is okay. So we are continuing on with this conversation about soul. This aspect of the one infinite reality that is the non-volitional aspect, right? So it's impersonal, it's only responsive, and it knows how to do things, but it can't actually make any initial movements of its own. And so we are in this section called Mind and Ether. Mind and Ether. So these are the places where when we read classic New Thought, which is generally New Thought books that have been written between 1850 and let's say the 1930s or 40s, there is obviously no option for scientific explanation other than the science of the time. Right? I mean, that's what they're going to be using. And so at the time, ether was a big deal. They were trying to figure out what was actually the underlying energy or a fabric of the universe. They were trying to figure out what actually is in space. Is it a vacuum? Come on in, just walk right in front of the camera. Do not worry, just come right on in. It's just a little different today, so no big deal. And so ether was the answer at that time, that everything, somehow there's this underlying ether that, I can't even explain it because I don't understand it myself. It's really okay, because we've moved on from that, right? These are the kinds of things, when we say science mind is open at the top, when there are new discoveries in philosophy, science, psychology, or religion, when there are new discoveries, new insight, new revelation, right, that furthers our understanding. It doesn't mean we're open at the sides where we just keep shoving more stuff into it that other people are doing. So other people are doing it, and it's great, and we can explore all kinds of other things, ancient practices, other techniques of spirit, mind, emotion, body. We can do all of that, but we don't shove it into the science of mind. We recognize that the science of mind is something that we add to everything else that we're doing. But the open at the top is the idea that when there is a deeper understanding or a new revelation, right? And this happens with every spiritual tradition. That's why there are reform movements. That's why there are rabbinical arguments that go on for years and years and years. What does this mean? What does it mean today, right? That's why there are Christian theologians. That's why there are people like Sri Aurobindo, who in the 1940s did a whole rewrite of Hinduism using contemporary language, right? This is all furthering the conversation and making it more contemporary, adding what's new, unless, of course, you insist on there's only a traditional way of understanding it. And so in the science of mind, we remind ourselves we are in fact open at the top. So we are not going to insist that this old science is correct. What we can do is ask ourselves, well, if it's not ether the way that they understood it then, what is it? What is this fundamental underlying stuff out of which everything is made? The question is, if it's all a oneness, where does the stuff come from? And if we recognize that there is an intangible spirit that we've been talking about, now we've been talking about an intangible law that is part of the creative process. Well, the third element is the stuff out of which everything is made. And so elsewhere in the writings, Ernest Holmes uses the incredibly technical term soul stuff. Because, of course, nobody actually knows what it is. It's all theory. And so we had, for those of us who learned about atoms, we had the little tinker toy idea of an atom. You had the nucleus and the protons and the neutrons in the nucleus and the electrons that look like a little mini solar system. And of course, we've now understood from quantum physics that that is an inaccurate image of the atom. And so we have been open at the top to understand that there's something really interesting that now quantum physics, quantum science adds to the conversation. If I'd have been giving this lecture 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, I would have said, well, what they're really understanding is that you could change the word ether in this little section and use the word energy, and understand that energy is basically the building block of the universe. Well, then there's a conversation about, well, but it's really photons of light. And photons of light, interestingly enough, are actually not anything. They're packets of information. I have no idea what that means, right? Because my brain wants to go, oh, it's like a little droplet of light, like there's a droplet of water, like it's a thing, like it's something. But a packet of information isn't actually a thing, right? It's
like an envelope.
Sounds like an envelope, right? And then of course as all of this has continued not only to progress, but of course quantum physics is older than we actually imagine. But as that has become more and more and more used and understood, right, we begin to understand that there's actually a quantum field out of which things particularize. That's where the electron goes when it winks out of existence. It goes back into the quantum field, and then it winks into existence in a probability scale on where the probability of it for it to arrive in an atomic structure, subatomic structure, it's actually only probability of where it's going to arrive, which is just like a whole nother like mind-boggling thing, right? The whole universe is simply based on probabilities, not actually like it's going to be here. So we can just blow our mind over and over and over again. And so you can see, right, that we have continually progressed. So, Richard, I didn't give you any warning, but I am going to use the board because I conveniently have it for this particular conversation. So the problem that we have here, and what is trying to be got at is, for those of you who are students of science of mind, this is straight Thomas Troward, okay? So we have over here spirit, intangible, right, impulse, this is the divine aspect, and then we have over here matter. And we give the attribute to spirit of aliveness, right? It's the impulse, it's that which animates, it's that which creates, it's that which moving forward, right? So, and what we tend to do is say dead matter, right? Matter is, it's just there, it doesn't do anything unless something moves it. And we have the false idea in our spirituality that our goal is to bridge the gap, that we are somehow matter, and we want to bridge the gap to spirit. We want to become spiritual, which is nonsense because we already are. And so the Hindus know this, and New Thought and the classic metaphysicians know this, and it comes out of Hinduism, and it comes out of New Science. This is actually a continuum. It's not this thing you know, this thing goes here and this thing goes here, and what we're trying to do is bridge the gap. No, this is not the correct picture. This is the correct picture. It's a continuum. So there's so many ways that we can metaphorically get to this idea. One of the best ones is E equals mc squared. So energy equals matter speeded up by the constant, which is the speed of light squared, which is like a ridiculous number. So in other words, energy is vibrating fast, matter is vibrating slow. But what does this mean right here? What does this mean right here?
The same as.
They're the same as. This side has to equal this side, right? There's a correlation between the two. So, okay, I'm going to edit out the whole Hindu part. I'm going to edit that whole part out. We're not going to worry about that part right now. We can do that another day. Soul is interested in this portion. So here we have impulse, we have love, we have the creative act of intention, right? This is the movement here, and we call it the result. We call it the cause. This is the cause. Over here, we have static, form, and we call it effect. This is the thing that is created. So here we have no thingness. There's nothing physical here. This is completely intangible. This is tangible. This is something. Whereas this is nothing. Nothing. No thingness. Nothing. The ultimate void from which all things come, the Hindus call it. Right? The pregnant possibility from the womb of creation. So how does this happen? Right? What's the deal here? So, for lack of a better word, we understand this as a continuum. So somewhere, let's say, somewhere here, the intangible winks into particularization. So on this side, we have stuff, and on this side, we have field. Actually, we should do this differently. The quantum conversation gives us a metaphor to really help us understand. So on this side we have field, and on this side we have particularization. Particularization. So when they say that electrons wink in and out of existence, it's the closest that we have to how this side over here becomes this side over here. But there isn't actually a break. There isn't actually a break. Somehow this is, because these two things are the same. Oneness. These two things are the same. And all of this is what Ernest Holmes calls soul stuff. The stuff out of which everything is made. But notice that it does not have any of these attributes. It can't, it only takes the impulse, the cause, right? And that moves the field into particularization. This is what he's talking about here when he's talking about ether. Right? Ether was the word then. We've used energy. We've used light. And now, scientifically, we're at the field. This is a huge conundrum for science and for philosophy and for religion. And so one of the things that we're trying to get a hold of with this notion of the creative process is, how does this become this? And how do we look at this and extrapolate the cause from it? And what the hardest thing to do is understand the paradox that there is no break between these two, or they can't be a oneness. The oneness is the idea that it's a continuum from, this is a very crude analogy, but we could imagine that somehow this field the vibration of the field is slowed down until all of a sudden it becomes tangible. Of course, then we have to talk about the whole double slit experiment, which brings out the observer aspect of it, which allows us to actually be causal, but that is a whole nother conversation. So if you're interested in that, I'm doing a science and spirituality workshop sometime, I think it's in May, and we're really going to dive into some of these things because it's super interesting. Now, whether this is soul stuff or whether it's just a metaphor to help us understand what's happening doesn't really matter. In either case, it begins to remind us that these two sides are part of a oneness. And their expression, it shifts here. But this aspect of this oneness has no volition, no choice. It can't say, I don't want to become that. That'd be like the quantum field particularizing into an electron that ends up in a water molecule, and the electron saying, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that. Right? There's no ability to do anything other than respond to this causal impulse, and to become that which it is, which the impulse moves it towards. So this is why these conversations, right? Sometimes we wonder, that's so esoteric. Why in the world do we care about this? Why are we even talking about it? Because our mental model of the universe is critical. It's critical to understand that you don't become spiritual. Because the other side of that coin is, if there's a gap and we live over here, then we're constantly trying to bridge this gap. I want to build a relationship with spirit. No, there's no need to build a relationship with spirit. You already are spirit made manifest as an individualized expression of itself. So let us crudely use the same analogy, right? If spirit is the field, you and I are the place where it has winked into individual existence so that it can express and experience itself as an individual. But we don't have to become spiritual. We have to become aware of the fact that we are already that. This is already a continuum. But do you see, if we hold the mental model that there's a gap that we're trying to bridge here, do you see that that's a whole nother way of holding ourselves? And then we're constantly finding ourselves over here. Ooh, that doesn't work. Let's throw that one away. We're constantly finding ourselves over here, trying to get here. But we're already all of this. Right? We're already all of this. This is already, and we're going to talk about that as we continue to move along. Right now, we're trying to understand, what is our mental model of the universe? And for those of us who learned the atomic structure that looks like a little Tinker toy, right? That's a very image of the universe that is designed on duality and separation. And so that's why we press into the quantum field, the quantum physics. Again, whether it's one-to-one related, actually, the metaphor is so powerful to help us really understand what oneness means. And oneness does not mean that there isn't all this particularization over here, right? And all of these forms and effects, they're all different. They all become different things. Everything from an electron to a quasar to a black hole to a sequoia tree to a, some entity living in some other galaxy on some other plane of existence, everything, right? All of these particularizations, they're all different, diverse, and they are all a part of the oneness. But they're not all identical because they're all individualized expressions of this, which is the impulse of life to express itself and to become. So this is why we press on this, so that when you use the creative process, you're not doing it because somebody told you so. You're not doing an affirmation, you're not doing a spiritual mind treatment, you're not doing your visualization because you think it's magically going to work. No, it's because we have a different model of the universe, which actually, right, so we're not over here. We're not over here isolated and separate from that, trying to get back to it. No, what we're trying to do is remember that we too are this. All of life is this. The only difference is that we have developed enough self-consciousness, self-awareness, that we can actually draw these pictures on the board and examine them and go, oh, is that how that works? Oh, well, what does that mean? How do I use it? How does that, am I being conscious of it? Am I paying attention to how I'm using it? Right? That's the only difference. And that's what all of the mystics have reminded us for thousands of years, is that the infinite is forever trying to see itself and trying to express itself, right? And that creation is the desire of life itself to grow and evolve to the point where it can see itself. Okay. That is a whole nother lecture. So let's stop there. Soul stuff, ether, mind and ether. Let's stop there. Hi, Ryan.
Well, hello, Dr. Petra, and good morning. And thank you for joining us on today's episode of Art with Dr. Petra. And as you can see, we've been having lots of fun drawing pictures here on the board, but they're important pictures, and we want to hear what you think about these pictures. And so this is an engaging opportunity for you here, both in person and online. And the way that we're going to do that, just FYI for the folks, I know I'm talking to the back of your heads right now, but the first 3 rows, they are going to be on camera, so if you wish to not be on camera, move it on to the back. And for the rest of you, just stay where you're at, and go ahead and raise your hand, and we will bring a microphone by our rock star Patrick, volunteer over here. And, I feel like I've been leaving Richard out. So we want to give a huge shout out to our cameraman, Richard, over here with
Richard,
the...
yay!
Yes, round of applause, please. Yes.
Yay!
And Petra, you don't have to. And for those who are joining us online via Zoom, we'd love to hear from you, and you can do so by hitting the raise your hand icon, and I can bring you into the room. And for the folks who are joining us all over the globe on Facebook Live, we love that you're here with us in community, and we want to hear from you, so feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat, and I can bring those into the room, as well as those who are on Zoom. And so I know I said a mouthful, and I totally got everybody distracted, but let's poll the room. Does anybody have any thoughts on what Petra had to say about this ether to matter?
Oh, we got 2 right out here.
Got a couple folks.
Okay.
This is Ross.
Hi, Ross.
As nebulous as this is, it actually makes sense.
I know, it's weird. It's mind-boggling, right?
It is, but it makes sense.
I love that.
Sort of.
Sort of. Right, and these are the things that, truthfully, you just have to look at it through, this is how I think about it. You have to kind of look at it out of the corner of your eye. You know how if you ever hike at night in the woods, if you look directly at the path, you can't see it, right? Just like if you look directly at a very faint star, you can't see it. But if you look beside it, the star becomes visible. And the same thing with a path if you're hiking in the woods at night. If you look up and into the distance that you're going, all of a sudden the path becomes visible. Or if you look slightly off to the side into the darkness, the lightness of the path becomes visible. But if you try to stare at the path, oh my God, it will disappear into the darkness. And so it's that's what we're doing here, is just don't try to lock it in, just let it rest over there and look at it, just kind of look around it and see what then becomes, what reveals itself to you.
2 months ago, you introduced all this, to me anyway.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm finding is it matches my experience.
I love that. And that's why I continually say this is not a prescription, it's a description. It's a description of what so many mystics and psychologists and scientists and philosophers have come to. So I love that.
I mean, these things were apparently happening already over and over and over again, but I didn't have a model to put it into. And so when we started doing this, I said, let me see if I can use it with intelligence. And so I'd get an impulse or whatever it is. It was a desire or something that I'd call spirit. And the next thing I know, it appears out of nothing. But I know it didn't appear out of nothing.
Right. I love that.
But it just keeps showing up. And the way it shows up is often surprising and out of nowhere.
Which is the miracle, right, of it. Beautiful. Thanks, Ross. Gordon.
That's a tough act to follow.
Nope, it's all
Good morning,
good.
everybody. My name's Gordon. This was great to put it. I think we should have the whiteboard available all the time. It's fascinating to me. Well, I studied Buddhism for a while, and the sect that I followed, the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, what the leaders of it realized in prison was the idea of duality, that there is no duality. So it's kind of coming at it from a different direction. But when you draw that red stick figure right there, it reminded me of, I think it was Ernest Holmes, like 400 years ago. That's when religion, or why do you think religion about 400 years ago set it up so they didn't focus on healings or anything anymore? They focused on this gap, and I guess the only way you could bridge the gap was you had to go through the priest or somebody.
You had to have faith and belief was the only way you could bridge the gap, correct. And I have an answer for you.
Okay.
So we just had this conversation in our Bible and Old Testament course. The answer, and you've pegged it perfectly, 400 years ago, because that was the advent of the scientific revolution. And in the scientific revolution, which is amazing and wonderful and needed and necessary, two things happened. First of all, we became fascinated by facts, provable facts. And we didn't have the science of the quantum field, let's say, right? And so we started with relatively, we could say it's in the Aristotelian line of individual facts, and the more you break it down, the more you know. So it's reductionist, and it's particularizing, right? And so I can now prove this fact. Well, the problem is you can't prove in the same way, you can't prove the intangible. And so now religion has no other choice but to say, well, you have to believe in it. And if it isn't provable in the laboratory, So that's just, there's no pejorative, that's just a statement. Then the other piece of that is the scientific revolution also allowed for the reformation of the Christian tradition in the European Western model, right, where then all of that belief got, well, for lack of a better word, in many ways it got corrupted. Right, and so and so then all of a sudden it was like, well, wait, you're going to pray for me to get into heaven, but you're going to do that because I've given you, $100 so that you can put a gold statue in your church. Wait, because now the scientific is like, well, that doesn't line up in terms of factual knowledge. So it became a big corrective of the abuse of religion for the benefit of the clergy and the church, right? And so it just had an awakening effect, both good and bad. But it really separated us, really disembedded us in our natural awareness of the intangible realm. So before that, people lived inside a framework of life where the idea that there was an intangible realm was not only commonplace, people were experiencing it. And I mean, we're talking about all the way back to the advent of humanity and the first ideas that there's spirit in this well, or there's spirit in this tree, or in this deer that I've just that's just given its life for me to eat. And so the one of the negative impacts of this scientific revolution was to disembed us from our native, intuitive experience of this oneness. And so between the two, this sense of separation became even more pronounced, right? So that's the thing. And then we can go all the way back to the early theologians in the Christian community. Augustine in particular, who had clearly his own issues about all kinds of things. And that's where we get the idea that not only are we separate, but we are worthless. He was the one who really shifted the whole Adam and Eve story from a understanding of just a relationship with the divine into a pejorative idea of original sin, right? And so so we start out with we only live here, right? We don't have anything to do with that unless we've been purified. And so for 1,000 years, that was the position of the Catholic Church. Now you add science to it, and for many people, this just went away. Or the two didn't relate to each other in any way, shape, or form. If we were talking about ourselves, we were talking about our humanness, our bodies, our life, everything over here. So in the postmodern era, which is what we are in, every time you hear somebody say, we are spiritual but not religious, what we're seeing in the last 50 years with process theology and the advent and progressive Christianity and New Thought and all of this move is the recapturing the recognition that this actually exists, because people are moving beyond a purely fact-based understanding of life. And so not only did we lose our embeddedness in a world of aliveness, we also lost a very, very, very powerful way of knowing, which is our intuition. And so science removed intuition from our ability to know. And yet intuition is one of the ways in which we do in fact know. And our intuition is the experience we have that is beyond facts. And it's real, it's it's actual, it's real, it's identifiable. You can then check it with other people who are having intuitive experiences, not psychic experiences, but a deep intuition about reality. And so we're reclaiming that now in the postmodern world, because for a lot of different reasons, that's a whole nother lecture. We just won't go anywhere. So it's really interesting. And New Thought is very much on the forefront of bringing this idea forward, that the sense of separation is only a sense of separation, right? It's not actually, and it's not a duality. And I love what Ernest Holmes, I think I've said this before, this is my new favorite, I'm totally in love with this. It's been in the book forever, I've only discovered it in the last year. Ernest Holmes calls it a dual unity. And if that's not the definition of a paradox, I don't know what is, right? It's a dual unity. So I've spent almost a year now with just these two words. Like, how do I get that and embrace that, and where do I see it, and can I get it, and what does it mean? I'm just kind of playing with this, because if we insist on oneness without the recognition that these are different, but they're part of the oneness, we lose something really important. That was a very long answer to your question. I hope that's helpful. Ooh, you get me started. These are my favorite conversations. Oh, and Ryan's saying, okay, we have to stop. Is it time to stop? All right. So for those of you who are interested, please do join our annual meeting for noon Central Time if you're online, or if you're coming in to be with us and do our potluck and stuff like that. We have lots of cool things coming. We also have a fabulous workshop next week. Karen's doing her Good to Great workshop. Don't let your goods get in the way of your great. Oh my God, it's a fabulous workshop Sunday afternoon. So, Ryan, I'm going to turn to you. You had something.
Yeah, I also wanted to let people know that the day right after, on that Monday, you're going to be starting the Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, which is teaching the fundamentals of kind of what we've been discussing here today. So that's going to be a 5-week course. It starts on Monday. You can register, and it's available both online and in person for everybody. So if you're interested, sign up today.
We're really going to be diving into what does it mean to live from this place, right? We're going to be talking about universal spiritual practices that we particularly focus on. That's great theory. We do have a universal spiritual principle, anyway. We have another class that focuses on the theory of it, the philosophy of it. This class, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life, really focuses on the application of it. How do we live it? It's a great class.
Are you teaching it?
Yeah, I'm teaching it, starting on
Monday. And then
Monday.
also, too, that same week, we're going to be starting March 1st into the application of it, and it's for our democracy and advocacy,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
so it's
Friday
shifting
night.
and starting to use this consciousness, this intentional consciousness, I should say, in and around the thing that most of us in this room don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
But we should have our spiritual truth grounded in it. So
Yeah.
I want to invite everybody. That's both in person and online. That's March 1st.
Friday
I believe it's
night.
it's going to be Friday night. For more information, check out our events page on the CSLDallas and look under the last week of February. We're coming to a close.
I know, it's crazy. All right, and for those of you anywhere around the world who are going to the CSL convention next week in Charleston, I'll see you there. It'll be super fun. I don't think we have anything else to say. So contemplate this fabulous dual unity, and we will see you again soon. Bye for now.
All right. Yes.
Yay.